today we have spoken at length, during the main panel regarding the changing dynamics of youth unemployment. And we'll soon be having conversation around the importance of ESG in the corporate world, which is why we're extremely pleased to have with us representatives from KPMG, an organization that is well positioned at the cross section of these two huge umbrella topics. They lie at the forefront of various workforce as well as technological disruption, has led a lot of sustainability efforts in the process. So without further ado, let me introduce our esteemed guest today. First, we have Xing Yi. Xing Yi is currently a partner at KPMG Malaysia with extensive experience across the financial hubs of Singapore and Hong Kong. She specializes in financial services advisory and is the head of financial risk management. She's also the member of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants and hold a BSc in A&F from LSE. Next, we have Kevin, who is another LSE alumni with a bachelor's in mathematics and statistics. Kevin's career has brought him from London to Hong Kong and now back to Malaysia as partner in audit at KPMG. He kickstarted his career under the ICAE program and is now the chairman of ICAE Malaysia. He has over 22 years of experience working with a wide range of financial institutions and multinational corporations. And last but not least, we have with us Mei Xin, who is KPMG's Executive Director in Tax. She completed her Bachelor of Commerce from the University of Adelaide and is currently a member of the Australian Society of CPA, as well as the Chartered Tax Institute of Malaysia. As a Malaysian Ministry of Finance approved tax agent, Mei Xin specializes in tax and global transfer pricing solutions. So to kick off, I will ask first few questions, and then once we get through that, we'll obviously pass some time back to the floor to the public, where you'll be able to ask some questions and pick the brains of our guests today. So the first question, so I understand a lot of each of the panelists today joined KPMG at different points of their career, and has each been with the firm for at least a decade now. So what are some of the most notable transformations within the firm that we have observed, both in terms of culture and perhaps business environment as well? If you don't mind, Mason, we'd like to kick off the discussion here.
Thanks, Bar, for the introduction. And good afternoon, everyone listening in. Hope everyone is safe and well. Well, that's a good question, Bar, just to kickstart and to understand, what we have gone through in the last decade. Well, I've been with KPMG for a number of years now. After some years in KPMG, I just stopped counting. And I had the opportunity to work in audit in the beginning of my career, and now I'm in tax. For me, I have seen almost a 360 change in the way we work. I remember those days, when in my initial days when I first worked in KPMG audit, right? I have to go into the office, book a computer. You use the floppy disk to save the information. You print documents. We use typewriters. We fax documents to our clients and so on. We used to carry so much files to our clients' premises, and then we come back with even more documents, right? So we're talking about loads and loads of documents. Those were the days, right? But fast forward to today, we use a lot more technology tools in our work and working towards paperless one day. Yeah, the pandemic has really pushed us to adopt and embrace digitalization in our daily lives. I'm glad that KPMG started this process earlier on, right? And has somewhat ingrained in the KPMGian like us, right, to always look out for innovation in our work. It helps us take away, the routine and the data processing time, so that we can focus on how we can value add when we're servicing our clients, right? So I guess we have embraced and changed in how we collaborate with each other as well over the years, right? I've seen, the way we structure our offices. There's a lot more flexible workstations around. Even before the pandemic, we have started to renovate our offices to incorporate cafe-style working areas, so that our younger colleagues, can. I guess this is a lot more better environment for our younger colleagues to collaborate and initiate discussions. So we are always constantly trying to improve and attract talents to ensure that our workplace is conducive. Now that we have a lot of us are also working from home, right? We have to ensure that we continue to work as efficiently and as productively at home, right? Using certain technology tools. We do a lot to ensure that our employees are satisfied with the workplace. We do a lot of surveys, a lot of feedback sessions to get important information for us to constantly look out for improvements, right? I think this is important because we're always attracting younger, new employees, and we need to retain our talents in KPMG. So in terms of working culture, I've seen the way that we work in the past, and now we have changed so much in the area of collaboration. You know, when I initially joined audit, I only know my audit colleagues well because we are very much working towards servicing our clients. We're always out to a specific client's location. But today, we work very closely with our tax colleagues, with our advisory colleagues. We collaborate a lot more. We share a lot more information. We are a lot more, I would say, in a very good networking environment. Because I think today our clients are looking at us how to service them collaboratively rather than individual departments servicing them. So I think, yeah, we are moving towards that direction and improving ourselves as well. There's just a lot of changes that have been undergoing in the last 10 years. I can go on and on and on, but I think these are the areas that has changed at least the most from my personal perspective in the last decade. And what I would expect is that the only thing that is constant for us is change. Thanks, Bar.
Yeah, that's a good quote over there. I think regarding paperless, it sort of gets taken for granted, right? I think Malaysia has been very in a good step in terms of going to paperless and digitalized workforce. You'd be surprised, you know, like Germany, even in like ECB, that's based in Frankfurt, they're still using paperwork and like physical mail. So Malaysia definitely for its standing in the world is doing quite a good thing in terms of digitalization. So I would like to know just more from a personal side. So when you reflect on your career so far, what are some of the most defining moments which have propelled you to where you are today? You know, how will you describe your career trajectory, you know, across different countries, across different offices, and even across different divisions? How was that trajectory like? Singy, if you don't mind, would you be able to take this question?
Yep, thanks. Thank you, Bar. I think over the last, how long have I been working now? Almost 20 years. It is very interesting. If you ask me what my career trajectory, how can I best describe it? I would say that it is unplanned, totally unplanned. I'll just give a brief background of where I've been and how I landed at where I am today, right? I started out my career after uni. I came back to KL. And at that time I was more terrified to be in the zone or the red zone in London. So I came back to KL, qualified chartered accountancy as in audit, right? I spent a few years in audit actually. Did not think that I would like financial services. So I did a lot of energy, utilities, media, telco companies, right? Then opportunity came knocking from Singapore to a bank, and I went because it was somewhere different, right? And it was in Singapore. So I thought I'll spend a couple of years in Singapore. But instead of a couple of years, it turned out to be, I think, about 7 to 8 years. And when I was in Singapore, I'll explain a little bit more about some changes that happened when that I found very important in my career. But so I spent a couple of 7 to 8 years in Singapore, and after that I went to Hong Kong, and after Hong Kong I came back to KL again, right? So full cycle back. Okay, so the defining moment for me was I suppose going to Singapore to a bank was where it all started, because that kind of began my journey in financial services. It was an investment bank. It was a Barclays, right? But the thing is, I didn't like what I was doing in the first year. And it was either I left or I told my supervisor about it. But I decided to talk to my supervisor, my immediate boss, right, who hired me over there in the first place. And after conversations, he transferred me to a department where defined my entire career path until today. So that's the Treasury Department, and it was a Asia Pacific Treasury Center, lah, right? So that's where I learned about capital and liquidity management. So the conversation I had really helped, and because of that, it set me on my career, and I really enjoyed it. I learned so much in those few years. It was really crazy. It was very intense. I had no idea what was coming because it was new, right? But I suppose I took on any challenges. We went from regionalizing, localizing, selling off businesses, buying businesses, things like that for Barclays when they were expanding in Asia, to shutting them down later on. So it was actually very interesting. And as I said, it was unplanned, right? Then after that, I took on another career move to look at liquidity management in OCBC, a Singapore bank, right? When that opportunity came about, so I went. And then the move to Hong Kong came where it was also unplanned because I moved for personal reasons. And when I was there, I decided to join consulting because I thought that, let's try something else. Hong Kong has 100 over banks over there or more. And it might be a good place to learn about many financial institutions rather than be with one, right? So that's what I did. Unfortunately, again, for personal reasons, for family reasons, I moved back to KL. But again, right, my experience is that another turning point for me was not a turning point, but another defining thing that makes me even more confident about why communication is so important is that when I was in KPMG in Hong Kong, I spoke to my my partner at that time, right? And I told him, look, I have to go back. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what's my job. I just need to go back immediately, right, for family. And they made it so easy for me, right? They just said, just go back to the network office. You don't even need to interview. We'll just make sure that happens, right? And when I came back to Malaysia office, it was as if it was no different. And if you understand how network offices work, like partnerships work, right, it's actually country by country, entities by entities, right? And I was just very glad that it was so seamless for me, and my career transition to the Malaysia office was seamless, and I could just get on with it. And I was already 7 to 8 months pregnant. I mean, this, you would ask me about personal, right? This is really personal. But I don't know any other companies who would, take in a person 8 months pregnant to start work. Yeah, but I think having all these communication lines open and constantly informing them about what my personal life is like or what my needs are, that definitely helped. And to be honest, that's the same mantra I take with my team as well, because I think that especially in Big Fours, right, we have a culture of we want to know what we as much as possible, as fast as possible, and people have this connotation that after you've learned enough, you move on. But then I think that that's not necessarily the case if you have a culture where you can communicate your needs, right? So you can always still learn as much as you want within the firm, and I think that has proven very true, right? For me, right, in terms of having very open communication lines. So again, if I can just sum up my career trajectory, it's been unplanned, but preparedness and the dedication that I've had in my work definitely set me up right when the opportunity and the need came for me to move or make major decisions. So yeah, hope that helps.
That's a good one. I think communication, that's very underrated, especially when you are at the very early stage of your career. You tend to not try to speak up for what your needs are.
Yeah.
I think I'm in that position where I've come to realize actually we can take ownership of like what we want to do, and the colleagues as well as managers, they're always there to listen.
Yes.
So that's a very, very important point. Definitely agree. So Kevin, I know you work, or you gave quite a lot of speeches to like students and LSE undergraduates. So if you were yourself a student again, what piece of advice would you give yourself in hindsight?
Thanks, Bah. Wow, you give me the most difficult question. But actually, very easy to answer, I guess. If you ask me to ask myself as a student, I would tell my student self, YOLO. Yeah, you only live once. If I could turn back the time, I would probably not spend so much. I think, as you know, we're all, when we go to university, I think everyone is in university, you try to build your career. You go for, internships, you look for jobs and applications and all that. But just also remember to have fun, be a student, enjoy this one moment that you have to sort of and enjoy life, because once you're out there in the real world working and studying, and if you're doing a professional exam, you won't have much time because you have to focus on that. You just see life catches up with you later on. There will be commitments, marriage, children, etc. I'm not going to try to scare you all, but telling you that if I was a student again, I'd tell myself, YOLO, go travel. If you like traveling, go travel. You got a hobby, go do it. Just student life is the best time when its stress levels are low, commitments are probably lower as well, and I guess as long as you know how to keep up on your studies and attend lectures, you should be all right. Yeah, so that's my input on that.
Yeah, I wish I had this conversation with you a couple months before today. That would have been very helpful. That's a good point.
Can I say the traveling is so true? Because I think that was the only time in my entire life where I could book open tickets for my traveling. So I can book one way and then not worry about when I want to come back, right? I'll go until, yeah, I probably shouldn't advise you to do that. But yes, that was the only time in my life.
Yeah, I think there's interrailing, and now with budget airlines, I think it's so much better. Back in our days, Ryanair and EasyJet didn't exist yet, so we didn't have that chance. It was all interrailing. So do it. Go to Gibraltar, go to Barcelona, and whilst you're in the UK, because once you come back to Malaysia, if you come back, it's much harder to travel Europe.
Absolutely. Do get two-way tickets. I think in case you get stranded over there, now it's COVID, but go travel, guys. Go travel. Yeah, so I'd like to go a bit deeper into sort of from a recruitment point of view. So in your view, what would be some of the most crucial differentiators that set KPMG apart from companies within the same industry, or even, for example, other banks? What was it for you that led you to join KPMG and has remained to today? Anyone?
I can take this question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I have a little bit, I can compare a little bit, but I would say that anything between companies is obviously culture, right? So between Big Fours is culture, between commercial and Big Fours, then it's about the type of work. I feel that between commercial and services, professional services, you learn very different things. And it could be that you would be in different time of your life that you choose different career choices as well. You make the different career choices as well. So when I started out with in audit, I think, well, the hours are like, right, especially in part of the world. I think in the UK, you're a bit more protected and people ask you to go home at 5 o'clock. But then, no, but then in our part of the world, I think we still can't run away from the fact that the hours are long here. So it's something that, well, Kevin has a lot of stamina to be in audit for so long. It's amazing. Respect. But I found that, yeah, so audit, I started out with audit, and that was really great because that's where I learned a lot, right? I saw a lot of different types of businesses. I learned about businesses there, right? Because it's about what you want to take away from every job that you are in, right? And then, but when I joined the bank, I also learned a lot because I learned how to operate, right? I learned what it meant to actually be part of a process. You are one little nut and knob of an entire machine, right? And everybody might not seem important, but take away one team and it's not as seamless, right? So it's very interesting as well to be in-house and to have that experience and to hear and listen and to be part of the decision-making process of in commercial. So that has given me a very different lens as well. And obviously the culture that comes with this kind of experiences is also different, right? This kind of setup is also different. You have different decision-making authorities and all that to be in place. Then when I came back to professional services, I felt that I was equipped with a lot more industry knowledge and commercial knowledge, right? To be able to put things into perspective. So culture-wise, I enjoy professional services culture because there's a sense of camaraderie in everything that we do for some reason, right? It could be I know this sounds really geeky, but then we have this inter-accounting firm games and you cannot imagine how competitive it is, right? And the big four, so everyone is in there, like you guys, like, shirt and suits and tie. But at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, all accounting firms allow their everyone to participate. You get days off to represent the firm, right? and if you win medals, you are really celebrated by your firm. So the sense of camaraderie is so strong when it comes to this. But the culture is really very different in professional services, so I really like it. I find it to be slightly less rigid as well, because you have to be flexible in terms of how you want to approach things. You want to do things in different but effective ways if you can, right? In constantly improving. You can't always say, oh, we'll just do the same thing as last year. I think gone are those days, right? So it doesn't apply anymore, right? So I think the environment has changed a lot, yeah. But that's my take on the differences in culture. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I can share also, echoing from what Cindy said. So I think why I'm still in audit after 22 years is actually more for the variety. So I mean, to share with you, so I spent 4 years in London after I finished the LSE, because back then there was the way to do, if you want to do the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales or ICAW exams. Now you can do it in Malaysia under Sunway, but before that we had to do it in the UK. So 4 years was good. Then after that, I was given an opportunity to go to Hong Kong, and that's where my adventure began. When I went to Hong Kong, the first thing they asked me, "Are you Malaysian?" I said, "Yes." "Can you speak Mandarin?" "I'm okay." I said, "Oh, okay, is good." They sent me to China. I was in China for 3 years. Yeah, I traveled all around China. Spent 6 months in Beijing, 6 months in Shanghai, 6 months in Shenzhen. I audited insurance companies, and we had to do branch visits. So I've been to Harbin, I've been to Urumqi, I've been to all sorts of places that you never imagine, okay, and all different cultures there. I even went to Inner Mongolia, staying in the yurt to go and audit the branch there. So very interesting. I think if you like traveling and variety, audit is definitely that. I mean, ever since I joined KPMG Malaysia, which I did after I left Hong Kong, yeah, I've continued to also travel. I've got some really interesting countries that I've shared with my colleagues. I've been to Mongolia, as in Outer Mongolia, where it's minus 32 degrees Celsius. I've also interestingly been to North Korea for audit. Yeah, amongst others, I also audited a coal mine in Indonesia, where we had to sit on a 4x4 for 6 hours to get into the jungle. And when you audit in the jungle there, right, at night, there's no lights, it's just pure darkness. All sorts of things. I mean, we go to Singapore, US, UK, all for work. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of variety. And even without traveling overseas, right, even in Malaysia, when we do audits, a typical auditor, right, will spend about, a few weeks doing a client's audit. So they'll be there with their team. Then later on, they'll go to another client. And depending on what industry you're in, financial services, you could be in a bank one day, then you'll be in an insurance company the next, and you'll be an investment management company. If you're in other industries like consumer products, you'll be in a factory, you could be then in KLCC. Yeah, so if you like variety, if you like to have adventure, I think that's what keeps me going on in audit, because you meet so many people and you make so many contacts. Yeah, and now also audit has evolved. We're no longer just being counters, what they called before. We actually add value. We come up with solutions to clients. We also introduce our advisory and tax colleagues, like Cindy and Macy, who then come in and help our clients with more advice and how they can, you know, make their operations more efficient, stuff like that. So yeah, I think as Cindy said, it's more holistic now, and yeah, certainly more interesting times.
Yeah, I'll be very curious to hear about the story on North Korea. Yeah, sorry, Mason.
Just to add on a couple more points, right? From my perspective, because I did have a chance to work in audit and then now tax. I get to see both sides, right? And I do enjoy both, right? Whether it's audit or tax, because when I was in audit, we get to meet so many different clients, right? In different industries, different functions. I do enjoy meeting people, and no single business is the same as the other, right? So you're constantly learning, you're constantly challenging yourself to pick up new things. Now that I'm in tax, I'm in the area of transfer pricing. It's also quite interesting where, you know, I get to meet and talk about very economic centric issues with the client. This is where I feel that my audit experience helped me, because I can read financials a lot better to be able to appreciate the issues and how to relate it to my clients. And at the same time, right, because we know, right, tax is it's a compliance requirement for everyone. No one can run away from it. It's an education process to tell clients, yes, if they make profits, they have to pay tax. But at the same time, we deal so much with the tax authorities, and I do see a gap, because tax authorities' knowledge is almost always theoretical. We need to bring them down to the ground and make them appreciate what are the business challenges, especially in COVID environment, right? So that they do not just have this mindset of, oh, when I visit a multinational company, my objective is to collect the tax. But what is tax when there is no profits, right, in the supply chain? So that's why I do see that there's this education process. I think as a professional firm, we should engage with the taxpayer and also the tax authority to get them to talk to each other, to try and mitigate tax disputes moving forward. So I think this challenge keeps me going, because every time I need to understand the transaction, I need to understand the industry issues. That somewhat motivates me.
That's a fantastic point. Being able to be in that educational and like consultative role, I think it's very meaningful as well. Yeah, so Mason, I actually like to ask another question as well. So if you look back at your experience in facilitating the hiring process for like new joiners, be it indirectly or directly, what sort of angles do you evaluate candidates from? What are some of the skill sets that you think will make a great fit for your business? And has these expectations changed since the pandemic?
Yeah, maybe I can start
Yep.
with my 2 cents. What are the attributes that I look out for in new joiners, right? So when I interview a candidate, I want to know what is the candidate's passion, what are they looking for in his or her career. You know, other than academics, I mean, academics is a given coming from the university or whatever academic background that you have. I'm looking for someone who has got a good attitude, always hungry to learn, and that the candidate can make an impact in whatever area of specialization that, you know, they want to be in, right? So if the candidate is keen to acquire knowledge, attitude to me is most important, because technical skills to me is secondary, because that's something that can be learned, that can be, you know, taught in practice. You know, they can be observed. But attitude, something is really ingrained in the candidate's personality. So that is what I look out for when I interview new joiners. Someone who is resourceful, who puts initiative and enthusiasm in learning new things, right? You have to be hungry. You're like a sponge. When you come out from university, you're like a sponge. You want to learn as much as possible, to know as many people as possible. Yeah, the other thing is for the new joiner to be hungry and to find ways to network amongst themselves as well. Yeah, so I guess in the service industry like us, right, getting the right fit is very important, because if we are passionate in doing what we do, and when we advise our clients can see it, whether we are happy doing it or not, or we're just doing it for the sake of completing something, right? We want to put our heart into it. So I guess that's what I really look out for. But in a pandemic environment, this requirement probably doesn't really change, but it sort of helps widen our nets to hire new candidates. Say, for example, today our Penang practice needs staff, right? I can always look up for candidates in, whether it's in KL, whether it's in Ipoh. As long as that candidate can work efficiently at home, I don't see why, you know, that person is not being considered for a position in Penang, for example. So when we can travel freely, then obviously that candidate can travel. But that helps us, you know, to get more candidates even now if we cannot work physically in that particular office. So I don't see that really as an obstacle.
Yeah, it's interesting you say everything, because I've had several team members where we've onboarded them, and until today, after 6 to 7 months, they didn't have to go into the office. So the laptop was delivered, and we have the onboarding online. I haven't. So we see each other on Zoom calls, at Teams calls, right? Yeah, so we're going to have a gathering soon, and it will be the first time I see a lot of the staff, right, who were onboarded last year and this year. So quite interesting. And we've been also doing all our projects. We have gone live and we've pitched, won, delivered projects, run workshops, attended board meetings, everything end-to-end online and virtually. I mean, online is a very old term right now, virtually. So yeah, I think a lot of things can become very hybrid or
that's right. That's right.
Virtual. Yeah.
So it's good for us if, you know, we are adopting tools to facilitate our work. It's quite seamless nowadays.
Yeah, maybe I can add some more 2 cents worth here, but totally agree with both Mason and Cindy. I think my 2 cents is that to go into, let's say, audit, right? Don't think that it's only accounting and finance that goes in. You know, it's not. You can have any background, because going into audit is like Zini mentioned, it's a you know, platform, a jumping board for you to start your next step in your career. So I mean, as Bar mentioned earlier, I actually graduated as a maths degree holder from LSE. So I have no accounting knowledge prior to that. The first time I ever did debits and credits was when I did my ICW exam. You know, but so don't let the fact that you didn't do accounting and finance be a deterrent to come in. And the other tip I guess I have for budding graduates like yourselves to be coming in is, although people say don't judge a book by its cover, please do dress up properly and prepare for your interview. Yeah, look smart. Know the company that you're interviewing for, because these are the things that your interviewer will expect you to at least know the basics, how to behave professionally, how to dress professionally. I know now it's casual work from home for a lot of people, but that first impression on your interview, at least, you know, dress up for that, even if the interview is virtually or in person. Yeah, so that's my 2 cents worth. Back to you.
Right, those are great points. So maybe now we can talk a bit more on the industry itself, based on some divisions that you guys lead nowadays. So what particularly quite interests me is, I know Bank Negara Malaysia, early next year, so they will name the recipients of the new digital banking license. So what role does KPMG play in this wave of financial inclusion brought about by challenger banks? I know Kevin and Singy, you guys are championing for fintech as well as digital banking at KPMG. So maybe some insights into that.
Kevin, UK, I start first, and then you can add on as well. Yeah.
Please.
Okay, so for digital banking, yes, January 2022, that's when we think Bank Negara has in a way we're kind of expecting the digital bank licenses to be issued, and up to 5. We definitely are helping several clients, right? Quite a few clients in this perspective, and it's interesting how challenger banks are seen as the drivers, right, to bring financial inclusion into fruition, right, for Malaysia. So in terms of what we're doing, the work that we do with the applicants, right? It ranges from, you know, like preparing the license application itself, business planning, financial modeling. And I think if we talk about how do we, what kind of role we have in terms of driving the financial inclusion agenda, then it's really, you know, reinforcing the point, right? And reminding that when we set out the objectives of building this digital bank, we do have to take into account innovation, financial innovation, as well as financial inclusion. Who are the target markets? Is it enough, right? So with the population that we have in Malaysia, and especially now, it's not just B40, it's escalating to B50 already. The income levels are coming down as well. And so who are these target segments? How do you identify them? Are you able to reach them, right? How will you serve them when you can reach them, right? So what kind of products are you offering? At the end of the day, the challenger banks are not going to give you a really new funky financial solution product that nobody can understand, right? That's not going to happen. You're going to still get your bread and butter stuff like your savings deposits, your basic personal loans, you know, some motor vehicle loans, like your motorcycle loans and all that. It's just a manner that it is being delivered, right? It is in bite size. It is in more cost-effective ways because it might be cheaper because now you're going to deliver it through advanced technologies that in the longer run will become cheaper. And please remember, right, challenger banks don't make money immediately. They actually are bleeding losses. Most of them are bleeding losses in the first few years because technology costs a lot upfront. It takes several years, not say many years, several years for the cost to actually make sense after you spread it out over a lot of customers. So it has to go to the masses, right? And there's also this thing about when you are going to serve a customer segment that is already considered underserved and underbanked, likely B40, B50, how do you balance the part about being ethical about this? Because you want to be financially sustainable, but yet you also want to be very careful with lending, for example, at rates that may not be affordable for that community, right? Then what's the purpose? What's the point, right? So there are these balances and these things that we need to balance out, right? When we think about the business plans, because you have to help the client to design the products, or rather work with them to design the products, put in the features, right? The features are not just about interest rates, how much rates you're going to charge or how much rates you're going to pay to them, but it is also about the features in the sense of ancillary things, analysis. You want to provide more education, right? And how do you deliver it? You're not going to make them sit in front of a Zoom camera like this, right, for the 1 hour. It has to be like a 10-second video, a 15-second video that can help them to upskill and upgrade their knowledge about financial management, right? The other thing about financial inclusion is not just about giving them access to banking products, it's to help them to improve on their financial literacy. Malaysia has one of the lowest financial literacy in the whole of Southeast Asia. I think we're like number 15 or number 16 out of 20. That kind of number is quite bad. And the statistics are shocking because even pre-pandemic, a lot of the households actually had issues even getting together a 1,000 ringgit emergency fund, right? Tapping into their funds for 1,000 ringgit for emergency purposes. So our financial literacy levels are not good. You would also see all this news from EPF following the whole withdrawals, right? What has happened? We have a lot of people who have less than 10,000 ringgit in their savings when they retire. So all these are things that needs to be addressed if you want to talk about financial inclusion. It's not just about giving them solutions, right? It's a very big problem that we have in Malaysia. So this kind of brings me actually to another point, right? Is that it's not just the challenger banks that can help. You know what I mean? Like if, let's say, challenger banks are not there, conventional banks should be doing a lot too, right? It's just that conventional banks in the past did not see this as an opportunity because, or didn't want to focus on this segment because of the profitability, right? Because conventional banks also have their own parameters and benchmark thresholds that they have to meet. But with technology, again, because of the advancement of technology, now they can probably afford to do so in a more effective way, and they can reach these masses and provide more cost-effective solutions for these segments. So the game is not just about challenger banks supporting this financial inclusion agenda. Conventional banks have a role to play. And if you look at the Malaysian landscape, I'm sure many of you are still in touch with your families and friends in Malaysia, right? E-wallets actually have a big role. Okay, e-wallets may not be known to be financially sustainable, right? But they have brought a lot of Malaysians onto the cashless system. So in the last 2 years, e-wallets have converted, right? And the number of e-wallet users has more than doubled, right? In Malaysia because of the handouts as well, right? That the government has given us. And that is great, right? In the sense that now with more digitalization of financial services, there is a higher chance for the unserved and underbanked to access financial services right now. E-wallets are touch and go, are even launching products that can help the customers to save. They are not a bank, but they are partnering with asset management companies, right, to offer savings products. So you use the e-wallet service, but if you have saved enough in your e-wallet, you may not get interest, right, from the e-wallet because you're not allowed to. E-wallets don't give out interest, but the e-wallet has this service to channel investments for you to assess investments through the e-wallet. So that is a different way of delivering financial services as well. And that can also address financial inclusion in the long run, right? So there are many ways to address this. And I think challenger banks are highlighted right now because of the scale, because they can be well governed. And I think that's necessary and that's great. But let's not forget that there are many other platforms that can also drive financial inclusion in Malaysia. So what has KPMG done? Right now, our clients actually is very wide-ranging, right? So we definitely help the digital banks applications, but of the 39 applicants, right, 29 applicants, if there are only 5 licenses, so there will be those who have the aspirations of going into digital financial services, digital banking, but they may not be able to get it. What they do, right? So if it's really in their in their blood, right, and they really want to do this business, right, there are many other ways, and that's how we are also talking to many other clients, and we are engaging with a lot of tech companies, non-bank financial institutions, non-bank institutions, and we're exploring what are the other ways that they can be part of this agenda as well, right? We talk about financial inclusion, we talk about fintech for good, right, and fintech for financial inclusion purposes. There are many other ways to do this. So yeah, we're in a very big space here. Personally, from the fintech sector, I also lead the fintech sector. We also currently are working on a sustainability challenge at the moment. Today, I had a full day of boot camps, right, to help 12 participants to build their solution, and it's fintech for sustainability. And some of these solutions also are there to address financial literacy and financial inclusion. They're not banks, but they're fintechs, and they will have the capability to do so if they are put on the right path, right? So this is something that we're working with Bank Negara on, and the sector, we're also working very closely with the FinTech Association of Malaysia. So there's a lot to be done, and that's how KPMG is playing a very significant role in this FinTech ecosystem, and we want to be able to contribute, right, and to help groom. Right. You would also hear about how Malaysia mostly has already said that they want to have 5 unicorns for Malaysia. So we want to also be there to support this, right? So we are playing a very active role in fintech and in digital banking as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Maybe I'll take a step back, Zinni. Thanks for that. For the participants as well. Over the past few years, actually, in the region, Hong Kong has issued a digital bank license. Singapore has issued digital bank license. So share you for Singapore, right? Those who won the license in Singapore is Grab. Grab teamed up with Singtel. You have Shopee. You've got Ant Financial. What do you notice about them? They are actually not banks. Okay. So same with Malaysia. The 9 applicants that mentioned by Sydney, right? They're all not banks. They are actually companies that do other things. And that's why this is a very different, sort of market for those who apply, because they have no banking experience whatsoever, but they want to go into this market, which is where KPMG comes in, because we have that financial services knowledge, which we can share with our clients who are not banks. Yeah. So why banks are not applying for this is because the conventional banks already have a banking license, so they don't need a digital banking license. Yeah. So that's one thing. Also, you're probably wondering, why is Kevin, the auditor, involved in digital bank? Well, when you apply for a license to Bank Negara actually needs all those submissions and things to be verified by an independent party. So that's where auditors come in, because those that Cindy assists in the application, those will have their own verifiers to do it when it's application. But those that are not helped by Cindy, someone independent like myself, who is, so that means a non-KPMG helping them with application, KPMG can come in to verify it, because we are independent and we know what to go in the applications. Yeah, so there's a role for everyone in KPMG in terms of this digital license. So very exciting times, and we are really looking forward to January when the results come out. Over to you, Mahan.
Those are very fantastic insights to digital banking. So I think we will have some time for Q&A with the members who are sitting down in the lecture hall. So how we're going to do this is, I believe someone will be going around and pass the mic to whoever wants to ask a question. So when you have a question, just introduce yourself briefly with name, what course you're doing, what uni, and if you're redirecting the question to any particular speaker, do note that down as well. So over to you, whoever's running the physical room.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you loud and clear.
You can?
Everyone
Yeah,
else?
okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay. So my name is Puteri Ruslan. I'm a second year accounting and finance student in University of Warwick. So recently I attended a sharing session hosted by the Warwick Business School, where they invited alumni of Warwick who now is working in their second year in EY in the UK. So some of the key points they mentioned was that when they joined EY, there was zero assumed knowledge for their new recruits, and during the second year, during like the progression towards the second year is quite fast, where from zero assumed knowledge, in the second year they are able to start mentoring new recruits who recently joined, who are their juniors basically, and they also have mentors, their own personal mentors in their company, who helps them in their first year. So I wanted to ask, if I were to join KPMG Malaysia, would it be similar? The job prospects and would I get the same thing in KPMG Malaysia? That's the question. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I think that your question is more on audit, right? So I can help to answer some of that. In fact, I can relate to the question, because as I mentioned, I worked in London first before I came back to Malaysia. Yeah, but it's actually the same, not just in London, not just in EY or KPMG or any firm. This is how audit is. You really go in without any assumed knowledge. So that's why I mentioned earlier as well that it doesn't matter if you've got accounting and finance degree or other degrees. When I started in the UK, right, I had people who had a geography degree, I had someone who did a musical degree, but we all go inside there because why? Your first step is to graduate and go into work. Once you start working, right, you actually have to do a professional exam. So it's whether it's ICW, ACCA, CPA, or anything like that. It's in these professional exams that you then get your knowledge, yeah, and from there you use that knowledge to apply to work. On your question regarding whether you'll be mentored or taught to go on, yes. How it works is that, you see, when you join as an audit junior, you'll have an audit senior above you, you have an assistant manager, manager, partner. So everyone's gone through the ranks. And we know that when we go in as a junior, you've got your senior to guide you. Ditto that later on that junior is going to become a senior, and he's going to also know how to train his juniors. Then, you know, and then a senior becomes a manager, manager, partner. It's like I would say not a vicious cycle, but a friendly cycle, because everyone has gone through the process, so they do understand what it's like. When you go in, of course, it's not only assumed knowledge, but you can actually gain it whilst working, and that's where the mentoring, the tutoring comes along. Yeah, so it's because people who've gone up the ranks have actually gone through it, and that's why we always train each other as we go along. Yeah, so don't worry if you're going to go into an audit firm or any firm or bank. I think it's the same kind of thing. You will always have to learn on the job, and a lot of it is knowledge you'll get from your professional exams. Yeah, so the studying doesn't end in Warwick or any university. You actually still need to study some more later on. Hope that answers your question.
Maybe I can share a bit from the advisory perspective. So for our team,
hello, my name is Khairul. I'm doing law first year at Warwick. So my question is, in terms of applicants, do you think it's a good idea for someone to intern at a completely different industry before joining like KPMG as an audit firm? Or would you prefer someone who has gone through the process of like within the audit industry as an intern? Like, for example, if I were to work at a legal firm and join KPMG after, would you think that's a good idea, or would you think otherwise?
I don't think Karu put it earlier. Do you want to finish up the question?
Yeah, no problem. And I can also answer Karul's question, right?
Absolutely.
No problem. So, okay, so let me remember first Karul's question, and then, okay, let me continue about the previous point I wanted to share was that when we onboard our graduates to the advisory team, well, I'm in the financial risk management team. What we do is a lot about, let's say, modeling, right? Credit risk modeling, stress testing, right? So some of them are very quantitative based, right? We're talking about building models with statistical models and math models, right? And then there are also the type of work where it's about, like I talked about, license applications. So there are regulations, compliance related. There are also business plans or product, I suppose to a certain extent design, right? And business plan development, learning about financial models. And I can tell you that I've onboarded grads with also no background to accounting and finance. So I've had law graduates, I've had a physics graduate, very proud of that because it's so good. Not that others are not, but really very different mindset to the table. I've got engineering grads, and of course I have finance, accounting, economics, actuarial in the room as well, right? So we do hire across multiple disciplines. And all of them also have to start on the job. They may not necessarily want to do accounting papers because that's not our core area, like I mentioned, just because of the nature of our work, right? But there could be different papers that they want to take. And we also support that, right? So I have, in my team, I have people doing the financial risk management paper under GARP, the Global Association of Risk Practitioners, GARP, PRIM, CFA, and a host of other things, right? So as long as there's a relevance to the work, definitely an option for them to pursue, right? We also have an actuary department in assurance, and they take actuary papers. So it really depends on what you want to do, what you want to take, right? But yeah, so you just need to choose the right path, and you will learn on the job. Yeah. To answer Khairul's question about the internship, well, you can kind of take away that from what I just mentioned, the more breadth of experience for me is a better lah, right? So I really don't mind. As I mentioned before, my interns, some of the interns that I have, or some of the graduates that I have interned in F&B. and another one has interned in e-commerce, media, all sorts of things. So I think that the important thing is that they are applying to a job that they want to learn from and they're very interested in. And back to what Mason has shared just now, how interested are you in this job? How much passion do you have, right? How eager are you to learn? Do you know what you're getting yourself into, right? So if you do and you still want to come and join us, then come on, right? Come, just come. Like, your energy is more than what we know is already very, very good, right? And we can work from there.
Yeah, just to add on to what Steve has mentioned, I think internship gives exposure to the particular intern on how the working environment, potential job would look like, whether that you have any interest in pursuing that. Because I do now that I'm in tax, right? I do see a lot of relevance, especially for candidates with some legal background, because you always look at the law, interpret the law, and see how it's being how to apply in practice. That's very important. And especially today's environment, there are more and more litigation for tax-related issues, right? So I do see, a lot of demand for legal professions in the area of taxation. So even when I talk to lawyers, right, they are always struggling to find enough candidates to join them in the area of taxation, right, within the legal firm. So yeah, that's definitely a lot of demand for legal work in Malaysia.
Yeah, I think I can add on a little bit as well, just like in terms of breadth of experience. Where I'm working now, my ex-manager, she moved on to a different team. She used to study war studies. I think it was at King's. Super random. But that sort of still helped her in the career in some way. What we do is mainly client service, right? But her experience in war studies, she could resonate with a lot of culture, like because of how multinational our client base is. So that helped her in some way, in ways that she never expected. So I'll say in terms of degree discipline, there's always a way to relate back to the job that you want, but interest in the job itself comes first. That's the priority, I think. Do we have any other questions from the floor?
Hi, this is Khairul again. Just to piggyback on what you guys have just said before, do you think it's more valuable to be serving in the industry longer, or do you think that taking a postgraduate, for example, like an LLM or like an MBA, is equally as valuable, or would you advise us doing otherwise? Yeah.
If you're taking the postgrad because you don't want to come back yet, right? Then do it first. Get it out of your system. How important is it for you? Don't be, and it's a very personal thing I'm sharing here because I have friends who wish that they had done it before they started work, because after that it's very hard to stop working and then continue to do a master's. It's very hard, right? And then there are those who finished, they did it first, and then after that they're happy with it, right? And then, but they would have to acknowledge the fact that you will come in 1 year later or 2 years later, depending on how far you go. If you do a PhD, then it's probably 3-4 years later, right? You have to bear in mind these things. From an employer's perspective, to be honest, I don't see much difference between a very high quality graduate plus, and if I compare that to someone with a postgraduate degree immediately after university, I think technically, if you ask them to sit for and do something technical, right, there may be a difference, right? But on our day-to-day job, where everyone is starting almost on the same footing, right? I would say not too much difference in terms of delivery. If because you're talking about a 1-2 year difference in terms of how to say job, right? Someone who has worked at 2 years instead of doing a postgrad actually would have achieved more in the working world, in my view. Like, that's my personal view, right? Yeah, because it's so intense when you're working. Learning on a job is so intense. It's a very different experience, right? That study academics may not be able to offer. Not to say that having a master's is not good, right? I'm all for it. If you go in with your eyes wide open and why you want to do it. If you really want to finish it first before you start work, so you get it out of the system. But otherwise, yeah, you have to catch up with your peer. You have to remember that.
Yeah, maybe I can chip in as well.
Yeah.
No. So I think I agree with what Cindy said. But I think also if you want to do something postgraduate, right, you might want to consider doing something. I think something more perhaps like an MBA. But the thing is, with an MBA, right, you actually need work experience for it. So it's like chicken and egg. How do you do that? So I would advise you, if you want to do something postgraduate, well, don't do it immediately after you graduate. Do something that you can use later on, because all the CFOs, CEOs would have MBA, in Ivy League or London Business School or wherever. They need work experience when you do that. If you're planning to do postgraduate and go for a big bank, go for the big MBA, that perhaps that could be more useful for you to further your career.
Yeah, agree, Kevin. I think just based on what I see some of my colleagues, right, I feel that personally they learn a bit more when they have some working experience, because they can appreciate the issues and they are able to contribute more in the sharing sessions, whether it's a master's degrees or equivalent, right? And then they can bring it back and apply it in practice. So that's where I see, when a person wants to progress to the next level, that's where perhaps they want to, consider doing something in addition to a degree, but after obtaining a little bit of working experience.
Those are great answers. I think, unfortunately, we are conscious of time, so we've come to the end of it. I think this has been a very, very thoughtful discussion, which we had. So I hope the participants get some valuable takeaways from this as well. So what we're going to do here is, I believe you guys will go for a lunch break soon. Advise me if I'm incorrect, but regardless, thank you so much, Mason, Kevin, and Singy for your time today. I know it's late over in Malaysia, but thank you once again. So I hope you all stay connected, and thank you all for coming today.
Thank you. Oh, and you can add us on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, look us up, right? And just add us on LinkedIn if you want to have more chat.
Yeah. Hi, sorry, I just want to say thank you so much, obviously, to Mason, Kevin, Sini, and I think Anil might be here as well, and of course to Bar for moderating. Before we end the session, can I just have you to stay for a while, because we want to have a photo with all the participants, just standing in front of the screen with you guys on the screen, if that's okay. Can everyone just move to the front of the screen and try not blocking the screen? Yeah, just move to the front.
I think this one